Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very happy and so honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. And we do this by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to write books for kids of all ages. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show and let them know they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have three wonderful guests for you today. Kristin Peach will be up first. She'll be celebrating Tales from Slacksville, Slacksville's worst superheroes. What a fun conversation. Augustine will be here a little bit later on talking about Hang About Far From Home. And to end our program, our friend Tracy will be back to celebrate some families, all families.
You've heard the whispers. You've seen it on TV. You may have even seen the movie. Now it's time to bring Dungeons and Dragons directly to you with D&D for Hire!
More than just a game, D&D lets you step into the role of a hero you create and guide them on fantastical adventures with your friends. Perfect for beginners and experts alike, D&D for Hire is sure to delight and entertain your kids for weeks on end.
Such a fun game. There are endless possibilities. There's so many things that you can do. It's so much fun.
Our son Eli loves D&D. It's like his favorite thing to do all week.
I was like 15 when I joined. I'm 21 now. There are people who are in our party, really learn to come out of their shells.
Whether you're near or far, whether you're looking for a birthday party or a campaign to keep you adventuring for years to come, D&D for Hire has you covered. Learn more at dndforhire.com. That's dndforhire.com. D&D for Hire, bringing the adventure to you. D&D for Hire runs games digitally over Zoom or in person in select areas.
Before we invite our guests into the studio, I want to ask you, are you looking for a unique way to support diverse voices in literature? Introducing By YQ Book Fairs, where every page tells a story of empowerment, culture, and diversity. By YQ Book Fairs is a 100% women and minority-owned initiative showcasing a hand-picked selection of diverse books that celebrate inclusivity and representation. From captivating narratives to thought-provoking poetry, our curated collection has something for everyone. And hosting a By YQ Book Fair is a super easy and a fantastic way to raise funds for your organization or cause. So why wait? Visit buyobq.com today to learn more about how you can bring the magic of diverse literature to your community while supporting women and minority-owned businesses. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Adventures of Patch, delightful series of adventure stories written by David Gibby. Overwhelmed by endless hours of screen time, craving a wholesome escape for your little ones? Introduce them to the enchanted world of The Adventures of Patch the Bear. Crafted with love and imagination, these tales serve as a passport to wonder-filled adventures far from the digital buzz. Let Patch light up your child's world, allowing them to explore, dream, and imagine beyond boundaries. This is a really fun series that you and your kids will absolutely adore. The Adventures of Patch, written by David Gibby. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Oregon. Our guest is here today to celebrate her wonderful series of chapter books. They're called Tales from Slacksville. Please welcome to the show, Kristin Peach. Hey, Kristen, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Kristen and I were chatting about Oregon. I've never had the chance to visit Oregon, but I just spent a month touring El Salvador with a wonderful artist from Oregon, and she told me she loves the city and is very involved with a number of different programs working in the schools throughout the city. And it sounds like an amazing place.
Oh, it's really lovely. There's a lot of stuff to do here. Hiking is really close by. There's a really cool roller rink. There's museums and just really beautiful parks. We love it here.
Now, I'm guessing that Oregon, and Portland in particular, is a lot different than Slacksville.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, Slacksville is kind of a fantastical place. There's a centaur that lives in the forest in Slacksville, and there's a pizza restaurant where the pizza maker spins the dough on his toe instead of with his hands. Lots of interesting places like that.
Well, one of the titles that jumped out that I want to start talking to you about is Slacksville's Worst Superheroes. What a great name for a book. Tell us all about it, please.
So in Slacksville's Worst Superheroes, there's a string of mischief and thievery going on by some mysterious figure called Peep. And Officer Cop is on television pleading with the community, we need you to be heroes by reporting crimes. But people hear this and they think we need to be superheroes. So people, some who have interesting powers and some who don't, are coming out of the woodwork to help, but they end up making everything much worse.
I love that. The idea that, this story's filled with mischief and thievery and, words like that. When I was in the age of reading chapter books, I love that. It would get me excited to hear new words like that and to be able to use them in my day-to-day life.
Oh, yeah. And I think I love the characters in it. I think I started with a character called Speed Person, and that's my favorite. And the book started with just me thinking of superhero names, like weird names. And Speed Person was so funny to me. I thought, who is that? I have to write a story about this. And Speed Person is a hero who's extremely fast, but she's also clumsy. So while she's zipping around Slacksville trying to help people, she's also running into people who are spilling their coffee all over themselves. And she just keeps making a mess everywhere she goes. But she has such a good heart. She wants so badly to help.
Well, I guess we can excuse her for bumping into people because she has such a great heart.
Yeah. I think so.
Where do you come up with, you're talking about coming up with this idea and the different characters. Is it something that just hits you as you're going about your day-to-day life, or do you sit down and say, okay, right now I need to dream up somebody that I can use in my book?
It's a little bit of both. Like, there's another character called Samson Man, and he's kind of the opposite of Speed Person because he has a big ego. He wants everyone to talk about him and admire him, and he's a little bit bitter that Speed Person is slightly faster than he is. So that's one that I sat down. I thought I need a different kind of character. Who's that going to be? Samson Man. And then there's another one where my son said to me one day out of nowhere, I'd like to see a really strong baby. I'd like to see a baby who can get into a fight. So I came up with a character called Baby the Kid. And Baby the Kid is just an extremely strong baby. And this baby is dangerous whenever she has a tantrum. And Officer Cop is wondering, how can he harness the power of Baby the Kid for good and make sure that Baby the Kid doesn't become a villain?
I love it. I love what, as you're talking, it's obvious that you really have a lot of fun with these characters.
I do so much. And some of them are inspired by friends. Like I have a friend who told me her kid was being a little bit naughty, and she started counting backwards. And by the time she got to the number 2, her kid stopped misbehaving. And her friend asked her, what happens when you get to 1? And she said, I don't know. And so I made a character called the Mom. And so whenever people are, they're doing crimes, she shows up and she starts counting backwards from 10. And they say, what's going to happen when she gets to 0? And they stop what they're doing because they're so afraid of finding out.
Well, I know that is a character that everybody can relate to because I had a mom who never got to 1 in my life because I was terrified.
Yeah, that's funny.
So what's going on in this world of Slacksville? Is it just a way to, be silly and help kids, experience a silly adventure?
Yeah, it is. I don't take it too seriously. There's not a lot of rules in this world. It is a town where there are some people who have superpowers, but then there's also stories about a pair of teenagers who roller skate, and they're just very good at roller skating, and they end up stopping some crimes as well. And the funny thing about them is their sort of I don't care attitude. They don't care about the attention or anything. They're just trying to roller skate. So a lot of different things could happen in this world.
Yeah. I've had authors on who've created these amazing fantasy universes, and, they explain to me, and I tell them, I said, I have a hard time when I'm reading a book remembering all the different rules and physics of that universe. What is it like when you're creating it? And they tell me how they keep these maps, and cannons and, to make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to work. It sounds like you just go along and you hit a road bump and it's like, I'll just change the way the universe works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just having fun. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I have, a couple hours here and there to write. I don't really have time to plan out a whole map of the community or anything like that. So I try not to take it too seriously in that way. I just want the stories to make people laugh.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun, and I love it. And again, this is the type of book that I would have just adored when I was a kid. It's the type of book that my 2 kids would have adored when they were younger. I'm curious. You were sharing with me earlier that you are a mom, but you also were a librarian. Were there any books that may have inspired this writing, this series?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's books from back when I was a librarian that I would read to the kids. There's books that I read to my son now. There's books that I really loved when I was a little kid that inspire me today. Some of the books, there's a couple of picture books in particular that I read at the library that the kids loved. One of them was called Burger Boy by Alan Durant, and it's about this little boy who eats so many burgers. He's told, if you keep eating burgers, you're going to turn into a burger. And one day he does. And while he's outside, people see him, and this hungry mob of people start chasing him because they want to eat a burger. And his mom rescues him and has to find a way to turn him back into a regular boy. They all loved that one.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, we ask authors oftentimes, what kind of conversations can you have with kids when you're reading a book? And I think a lot of times those are, deep conversations about bullying and friendship and anxiety. But I think there can be some really neat conversations that happen when we're reading an especially silly book.
I think so too. That brings to mind another author. I'm thinking of Mo Willems. His books are so funny. And another one that I would read to the kids was called Leonardo the Terrible Monster. And it actually does sort of have a moral in the end. It's about this monster who feels like a failure because he's just not scary enough. So he finds this kid that he thinks is sort of wimpy and tries to scare him really bad. And this kid is crying, but he's crying about a bunch of other stuff that's bothering him. And Leonardo feels bad and decides that instead of trying to be a monster, he's going to be a really good friend. So in the end, they become friends with each other. But it's also just a very funny book along the way.
Yeah. What I was thinking, reading your books, your Tales from Slacksville books, And in meeting all these people with that silly kind of superheroes, wouldn't it be neat to sit down with your kids at the end of reading those stories and just coming up with your own list of silly superheroes?
That's a great idea. I would love doing something like that. I think something I've done at times when I'm writing is I'll just write a big list of words like qualities like fast, strong, acrobatic, and then just some other qualities too, clumsy and handsome and all these things. And I just match words up and see how they go together. You can do that with index cards with your kids. Just start mixing words together and see what you come up with.
What a great idea. Just get a stack of index cards, and on one stack it's adjectives, fast, acrobatic, whatever, and then that could be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
What? Can I tell you about? Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Go on.
No, I didn't mean to step on you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask if I could tell you about some more books.
Absolutely.
So another book that we've enjoyed as a family, we love the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. And there's one called Hard Luck. And in the book, Greg Heffley receives a wearable blanket called a body blankie. And it's this blanket that sort of has sleeves and legs, so you can get up off the couch without getting out of your blanket, so you can go get a snack and be warm. And Greg loves being cozy. My son also loves being cozy. And my son decided that he wanted to make his own body blankie. So we got 2 old blankets, and he laid down on them, and I just cut around his body, and we sewed them together. And it turned out very bad. So it's just something funny. We put all this work into it and just had a laugh as a family. But I put pictures of it on my Instagram. It's Tales_from_Slacksville. And I'm going to post up pictures of Greg with his blankie and then our blankie. And you can compare them and see what you think.
Yeah. It's like the original Snuggie that didn't work out.
I didn't. I had one a while back. I liked it.
Oh, no. Your Snuggie, your version of the Snuggie didn't work out.
Yes, our version didn't work out. It's very uneven. I don't think it was very comfortable. It didn't fit well. He couldn't walk around in it.
As a librarian and reading stories to kids, you're kind of like a professional story reader. Any tips out there for parents? Because I know, since I'm up on stage all the time, so reading with my kids and getting into the characters and the voices and everything, it came naturally to me. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, and so there might be people out there that are like, I wish I could do that and be as entertaining, and that kind of shyness might keep them away from reading as often as they'd like to. What kind of advice can you give those folks?
The mistake that I made when I first started out as a children's librarian was that I was just reading too fast. And I thought, I'm reading a little bit dramatically. I'm showing them the pictures, but I wasn't really giving them time to be part of it and time to take it in. So I just needed to slow way down, give them time to react, ask questions in the middle of the story like, whoa, do you see what he just did? What do you think of that? And make it more of a back and forth instead of, I am just reading these words to you. I had to slow way down and draw out the experience more.
You're absolutely right. As someone who's been performing in schools for over 35 years, it was the interactivity, bringing somebody up on stage, that was really engaging. Even in a room of 600, 700 kids, when I connected with one kid, whether it's talking to them on stage or just making intense eye contact with somebody in, the middle of the audience, and everybody can notice that we're connected. That kid and me was lasered in on each other. That really grabs kids' attention and brings them into the event, and it's a super way to entertain kids.
Yeah, That makes sense. I mean, kids can be a tough audience sometimes. And I think if you can make them active participants in the storytelling, that's when you're really going to get them.
Yeah. I always like to take time to really give a plug to libraries. I think that libraries are such important institutions. And I know in the age of the internet where everybody has access to books and you can get books online and all this other stuff, I think a lot of people are sitting back and saying, do we really need libraries? We have all these other needs going on. Make a pitch to let everybody know how important libraries are.
Libraries are so important because the truth is that not everyone has access. Not everyone has a computer and high-speed internet set up at home. Not everyone can buy all the books that they want to read. And if you haven't been to a library in a long time, if you go into one, you might be surprised at how active it is. People using the computers, asking questions, getting books. There are people for whom this is vital. People searching for jobs that they need. People that don't have homes that need a place to spend some time. It's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you are fortunate that you can afford every single book that your kid wants and you have the high-speed internet and 18 million different devices in your home, the library is a place where you can go and take classes or see an amazing clown show like I'm going to be doing one in the library this weekend. And, it's there's so much going on there. And it's a great way to be more connected with your community.
Absolutely. And besides that, I don't want to spend all my money on books. When I think about all the books we read, I'm saving hundreds of dollars by going to the library.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you go to the library and you find that book that you love and you bring it home and maybe you've taken it out 3 or 4 times, it actually helps authors because it gets authors' names and stories in front of the eyes and in front of the mind of the librarians, and they're more likely to buy the author's next book.
That's absolutely right. I mean, when librarians see a kid enjoying a book, they latch on to that and they will recommend it to other kids. That's really important.
Yeah. So what's next? What is happening next in Slacksville? Can we get a preview?
After Slacksville's Worst Superheroes, I'm still deciding what I want to do next. I've started writing some Christmas-themed stories, and so that's a possibility. In my imagination, I'm trying to come up with alternatives to Santa Claus. Who would be Santa Claus in Slacksville? I'm not sure. I have a Slacksville's Silliest Spooky Stories book, and I really love writing spooky stories. That's a good book for kids who want to read something spooky. Maybe it's around Halloween, but they don't want to get really scared. So these stories are, it'll mention the boogeyman, but it's more funny. So maybe I would write another spooky story book because I love doing that so much.
Yeah. You remind me, when my daughter was in 3rd grade, she wanted desperately, she was seeing commercials for one of the ghost hunter shows, and she wanted desperately to watch it, and my wife had wanted nothing to do with it, and her brother wanted nothing to do with it, and I really wasn't all that interested in it, but I thought, she definitely didn't want to watch it by herself. We sat down, and we spent the next 5 years watching Ghost Hunters, and they never found a ghost. Every time they're like, we're going to find the ghost this time. You watch the whole show, and they don't get anything. It was just, I don't know.
They make it entertaining, though, don't they?
They did. Look at this thing. It's the meter's going crazy. And it's like, that looks like a compass to me. I don't know. Anyway. Hey, Kristen, where can we go so we can get a ticket to Slacksville? Where do we need to go online to do that?
Well, if you go to our website, the publisher is called Strange Goose, strangegoose.com. You can see all the books and get links to Amazon. And we have some printable activities that would be good for a classroom or at home. If maybe if you're a teacher and your class is reading the Slacksville book, you can have these activities to go along with it, writing activities. And the books are on Amazon. If you don't want Amazon, you can go to pretty much any online bookstore and look it up, and it'll be there.
Awesome. And you were mentioning you have an Instagram. I think it was Tales_from_Slacksville.
Yeah, that's right. So any announcements that I have to make are going on Instagram. And again, you can see pictures of our wonderful body blankie on there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hey, I'm wondering, it sounds like Slacksville, you know, as much of a drag as it was to live through the pandemic, I think it probably would have been more fun in Slacksville.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like Slacksville is a place that doesn't have a pandemic, you know, it's more, it's too silly for something so difficult.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It would have been a great place to be.
Would have been a pandemic of fun.
Yes, it would have been.
We've had a lot of fun speaking to the author of Tales from Slacksville. The latest book is Slacksville's Worst Superheroes. Our guest has been Kristin Peach. Hey, Kristen, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I've loved talking to you.
This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by I Am Musical, Adventures of Waffles, written by Barbara Brown. Waffles is a feisty and funny dog who cannot play an instrument, sing, or compose music, but somehow is convinced that she is musical. In this book, Crouton the Corgi spends the day trying to figure out how his best friend Waffles could possibly be musical when all she does is make a musical mess everywhere she goes. This story is an opportunity for children to see themselves as valid and important contributors to our musical culture, regardless of their musical abilities, while also being the first of its kind to remind children and their parents that music belongs to all of us. Get your copy today. I Am Musical, Adventures of Waffles, written by Barbara Brown. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Lucas and the Game of Chance, a thrilling middle grade novel written by Anthony L. Mena. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. While Lucas is playing his flute at the seawall one day, he befriends a mysterious talking dancing snake that rewards him with fortune and favor. Some years later, tempted by greed and pride, Lucas loses all of his riches and his family. He now must set off on a treacherous journey through a frightening forest filled with suspense and strange creatures. To find Destiny, her son, Ilion, the sun, her daughter, Luna, the moon. These celestial guardians will surely allow him to reverse his misfortune, restore his honor, and win back all that he loves and treasures. Won't they? This is a reimagined Greek folk tale, Lucas in the Game of Chance. It's illuminated with dramatic and evocative pen and ink drawings that provide an ideal backdrop to the dark intrigue that fills this haunting story of human struggle, courage, and resilience. You and your kids are going to love it. Lucas and the Game of Chance by Anthony L. Mena. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us right now from right outside the beautiful city of Philadelphia. Our guest is here today to celebrate her debut picture book. It's called Hangabout, Far From Home. Please welcome to the show, Ree Augustine. Hey, Ree, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you. Delighted to have you on. Tell us all about Hangabout, Far From Home. Who are we going to be meeting in this book?
Okay, so it's actually a middle grade, not a picture book. And it is about a dog who gets separated from his owner, and he tries to find his way back. And along the way, he meets a cat. And in about the middle of the story, he finds out a secret about his owner, and it sends him on a complete different journey. It's a story about a tried friendship and homelessness and finding one's place in the world.
Wow, a lot of things going on in that story.
Yes, yeah, it's got a lot of adventure.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, but there's a lot of I think, heartstring tugs too.
What was it that inspired this story?
So it really came about in an odd way. I wanted to do a story along the lines of Kate DiCamillo's Edward Tulane's journey, the miraculous journey of Edward Tulane. And that was about a doll, a China doll, and the China doll didn't speak throughout the whole story, but like just amazing writing. So I wanted to do a love versus fear theme. So I actually had alternating chapters between hanging about the dog and then being the cat. And I didn't have them speaking, but it was about how they reacted to each other. And I sent it to an agent, and she said that wasn't working. And she suggested that I do one person's point of view. And I chose Hang About, and then the story, it kind of became his story, and he led the way.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Well, we are big fans of Kate DiCamillo. She's been on the podcast three or four times, and such a lovely person, and of course, an amazing writer.
Yes.
So you pick your role models well.
Yeah, she's incredible. I mean, she's a master.
Yeah. Are there other authors that inspired you to pick up the pen or pick up the keyboard to write?
I don't know that I was inspired by authors. I think that I learned by reading authors. What really inspired me was when I started reading to my kids picture books. And I thought, I was at home and I thought I just wanted to try it, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall in love with.
Yeah. That time that you spend reading with your kids, it really is, I think it's a magical time. Can you talk a little bit more about the joy both your kids and you experience from all those hours together with books?
Yes. Well, I have to confess, I have no other readers in the house, but I did read to them, and it was just about sharing like an emotional moment in the story, or about the laughs. I have boys, so I read a lot of books with a lot of laughter and a lot of adventure, and it was really for me, I hope they got the same thing out of it. It was coming at the end of the day, and we had, whether you had a good day or a bad day, you could always come together and read and share and feel loved. And it was a place to feel safe.
Yeah. That image of being together and feeling loved and feeling safe, was that in your mind as you're writing Hang About? And if it was, how did that inspire and inform the story?
I think maybe subconsciously it was there. I think my writing process is very, very organic. I tend to write like a full manuscript just to see kind of what emotions that I want to hit. But I do think that I tend to write about people finding a place of belonging. So maybe it was there and I didn't even realize it. Because my new story that I'm working on is about someone trying to find their way in the world and finding a place of belonging.
Interesting. I wonder what it is that is conjuring up all these stories. This sense of homelessness and finding your way home and finding a place of belonging. Any idea what it is? Is it something that you're seeing in life or a past moment?
It's not a past moment. I just, you're bringing tears to my eyes. I just want everybody to have a place in the world. I mean, I don't know where that comes from. I volunteer at a thrift store, and all the proceeds go to domestic violence victims. And I know a lot of them experience homelessness, and the kids can experience homelessness. So I just, the world can be scary, and I want everyone to know that there's good out there, and that there is a place to belong to.
Yeah. I know you were sharing that Kate DiCamillo inspired your writing. Is that the reason you chose this middle grade audience, or was there another reason for writing for this age group?
I think for me, there's just something very magical about middle grade readers because they're very open to anything new, and they're not jaded. They don't have all these bad experiences, and they're just open to what you're going to put out there.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
They're innocent, they're still innocent, and it's a great way to introduce them to things.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly it's a great time to help them develop a sense of empathy, help them, if they are feeling a sense of not being connected, not being home, giving them a sense of hope that they will find a place that they belong, and also hopefully inspiring them to include everybody and help everybody that in their lives feel included and loved. And I love that story. Did you always aspire to be a children's author?
No, I have a really checkered background. I was actually a CPA for a lightning second, and it just the business world was not for me. I did not connect with it in any way. So I did a lot of part-time jobs. I worked in retail and doctor's offices, and but it was when I had kids. And always in the back of my mind, I've been a huge reader my entire life, and always in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, it'd be so interesting to write a book, but I never thought I could do it because it just seemed insurmountable. But it was after I started reading to my kids, I thought, well, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Just try it.
Yeah.
So, and I wrote for a very long time before this got accepted for publication. 20 years, a very long time.
Yeah.
But I wrote because I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had to come to the point where if I don't get published, that's okay. So, I wrote because I loved it, not to get published.
Oh, wonderful.
That was a turning point for me.
Yeah. And what advice do you have for folks who are listening who also have this dream and a desire, and they've been at it for a while, and they're like, I should give up on this. This is never going to come true for me.
Stay with what you love.
Mm-hmm.
Fall in love with writing. Don't fall in love with publication. I always felt, now granted, I had my days where I was like, this is not going to happen. But I always felt like even though I wasn't published, what I was writing was somehow emanating out into the world. If it was how I talked to people after what I wrote something, it affects people in ways that you don't see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Hangabout, Far From Home, and also more about you.
Okay, so I have a website.
Mm-hmm.
It's reaugustine.com, and I'm on Instagram, which you can find my social media handles on my website, and I'm also on Twitter.
Wonderful. Well, we've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Hangabout, Far From Home. It's the debut middle grade novel from our guest, Ree Augustine. Hey, Ree, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. I really love your podcast. I think it hits a lot of different points about writing and reading and spending time together. So thank you.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. I am so excited. We are welcoming back one of my favorite guests to the show. He's become a buddy. That's the nice thing about this podcast. I've met so many friends doing this podcast, and today's guest is absolutely one of them. Joining us from New Jersey, he is here to celebrate his award-winning book. It's called Some Families, All Families. Please welcome back Tom Tracy. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hey, Jed, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am so excited for your success. You have published some great books talking and celebrating family, and that's what we do here on the podcast.
Yeah, well, so yeah, you teed up. I had a fourth book published last year, but all the books in my collection are a celebration of families, and in particular, diverse families. So really happy to help bring greater representation in children's books of families that sometimes are not as visible in children's books.
Yeah. I just had a really fun time a week ago. I had a performance at the Faneuil branch of the Boston Public Library in a very diverse neighborhood of Boston. And there was such a wonderful collection of families. And you don't know exactly who's connected to who, but you kind of get a sense, based on who the children climb up on. Sometimes they climb up on the wrong person, but usually. But it was, and it was like, wow, this is, I'm looking out into the audience, and I'm like, I'm looking at our collection of diverse logos. We have 12 different logos showing all different types of families. And I'm like, there they are. These are the models for the logos.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Well, similarly, so I love hearing that. I mean, it's the diversity that makes us so rich, right? As a community, as a society. Different perspectives just contribute to a greater whole. But I was inspired in this last book through my career as a social worker. So I don't even know if you know that about me, but I am a licensed clinical social worker by training with a specialty in mental health and in particular children's mental health and emotional disturbances, etc. So I've done a lot of in-home work with kids and their families. And sadly, Jed, there are so many families that feel marginalized or not seen by society as a whole for, the uniqueness that they bring or the specialness that is their family. And so this book was really kind of my homage to them. To bring forward a collection. Every page in this book has a different family structure represented on it. And so this is my way of saying you are seen, you're heard, and you're important and valuable. So it was a really special book to write and produce.
Yeah. I love that. And I know that there may be some people out there that are thinking to themselves, wow, but, that traditional family, it's so important, and there's studies that show, and it's great, and okay. But that doesn't negate the fact that families do come in all shapes and colors and configurations, and we need to celebrate and support all of these different diverse families. There was never a case in any time in history where every family was a mom, a dad, and kids. There were all sorts of circumstances that meant there was a dad and kids, or a mom and kids, or a dad and his mom taking care of kids. So the idea that diverse families and quote-unquote traditional families is a new thing just isn't the case.
No, that's right. For as long as the history of time, right? The history of families, there's always been different configurations and different cultures, right? I mean, some cultures invite the entire community to serve as part of the extended family. There is no what is the what is there's no wrong way to eat an Oreo? Was that the old commercial? Like, there's no wrong family configuration, and we won't get political, and we won't get into all of the different bodies of research, but, suffice to say that, what's been demonstrated time and time again is when kids feel safe, when they feel loved, and when the people that are caring for them, that are their biological family or just caretakers, provide them an environment where they can grow and be nurtured. That's where they do best.
Yeah.
That's where they do best.
Yeah. So what's the story that we're going to experience when we read Some Families, All Families?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, every page has got a different family structure, image, whether that's race, whether that's, family construct. So, what the story does is, as you flip through the pages, the first half of the book really talks about differences. Some families have a mom and a dad. Some families have a lot of pets, and other families have no pets. Some families live in urban areas, some live in rural areas. So it really kind of does this contrasting view of differences in a very respectful way that just honors those differences. But then as you get to the latter half of the book, where I take it is what's common. So we have all of these differences, but what's common about all families? So all families have traditions. All families have their favorite activities that they do. All families support one another during times of, stress, or crisis. And then ultimately the message here at the end is that all families, regardless of what they look like, regardless of their structure, all families provide unconditional love, and support, to their family members. So that's really, the theme of the book is to showcase differences, but then to show kind of how we're all still very similar, and have commonalities despite those differences.
Yeah. As you were talking about all families loving each other, I was reminded of a not too pleasant experience I had with a social worker in a school.
Oh no.
And, no, it's okay. You're not that guy. No, I was at a school in Vermont, and at the time I was doing an anti-drug show. And I made a statement along the lines of, we want you, the collective we, the community, we want you to make healthy choices because we love you. You're loved, and you're loved by your families. And I made it a point to say plural. And your family at home and your family here at school. And the social worker was very upset and wrote a very extensive letter, handwritten letter, because this is a long time ago before there was email. And said to me that it was completely inappropriate for me to tell the kids that they're loved because some of these kids come from abusive families, and we don't want them to think that abuse is love. And I said, well, I understand that. And that's why I specifically said plural, families, because they also have a part of a school family. And his response was, well, there are some bullies in this school, and that's not love. I said, yeah, but the kids are loved by the teachers. And he said, we're professionals. We don't love these kids.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And the reason I'm pointing it out is because at first it really hurt my feelings. It bothered me. But then I used it. Then I turned around and I started going to schools and I said, do you know, I had this experience when this person said this to me, and they said that don't tell your teachers this, but this person said that teachers don't love kids. They're professionals. I said, and I would always point out that the teachers automatically surround the kids. When they come into an auditorium, the teachers place themselves strategically in a circle around the kids. They probably don't even realize it, but they're forming a barrier to protect the kids. Sure. And at every place I went there, the kids are like, no, my teachers love me. And the teachers are like, I go, wow, how dare that person say that? And so I can't remember the point I was trying to make when I went down this road, but it was just the idea of love and family. And, there's just so many people ready to point out how bad the world is. And they're not focusing on the fact that despite our problems, this world is a pretty damn beautiful place.
Yeah. And there's joy that can be found everywhere. Sometimes it's you have to look a little harder for it. And so sometimes, life deals us a bad set of cards, but it doesn't mean that there isn't joy, and it doesn't mean that there isn't love. And if somebody can't find it, then it does help to have someone else that can help to guide and discover it. Because we all need joy. We all need love. Without it, there's an emptiness in our heart. And so I'm not sure what was going on with that particular social worker. We'll chalk it up to...
Yeah, he had a bad day.
He had a bad day.
Had a sour egg or something like that.
Yeah, but I will tell you, I have two daughters. You've met one of them, of course. She's been on this podcast for a different book that I've done. But I have another daughter who is, my oldest is 7, and my youngest is 2. And she is in daycare, full time. And she comes home and she tells me all the time that Miss, fill in the blank, we'll say Miss Shirley, her teacher. I won't use real names, but Miss Shirley's my best friend. At 2 years old, she says that because she feels the love from that community, that school family. So I think you're well said on your part. So, I'm going to say, yes, family comes in many different forms and love comes from many different directions. So I think that you were right on point. At that school visit.
Well, thank you. 25 years later, I am just I was very quick. I very quickly got over it. But I think it is important. You saying sometimes it's hard to see the love in our lives, and there are kids out there, and there are adults out there who are suffering, and they have been dealt a bad hand. I just spent November performing in Central America with Clowns Without Borders, and they specifically, their mission is to go and to perform in disaster areas for refugees, for internally displaced people. And so we met lots of people who have been dealt a bad hand during that tour, but they were still able to find love. Hopefully we brought them a little bit of love and laughter with our performances. But even in those circumstances, I found that they were able to find love in their community, in the people that surrounded them. And I hope that one of the things we do here with the show is encourage people to reach out and help others see that they're loved, and especially help kids see that they're loved.
Yeah, and I appreciate that about your show. I really do. I think that comes through with all of your guests, and it always makes me very happy when you invite me to come back. So thank you, because it's what I'm trying to do in all of my books. 3 of the 4 of my books are based on my own family's experience, but it is it's not self-serving. It's just using our family as a inspiration to tell a story. And the themes that I go back to time and time again in all of my books are the power of family and the power of love, in whatever form or shape that takes.
Yeah. And people who haven't heard you on past episodes of the show, you not only are familiar with diverse families because of your work as a social worker, but your family is pretty diverse.
Yeah, we are a diverse family, and proud of it. So we are a 2-dad family that have 2 adopted daughters. Our oldest, who is one of the main characters in several of my books, she's biracial. and then our youngest is African American. So we have an interesting mix in our household that causes us to be very mindful and thoughtful about how we attend to culture and identity, and as parents also how we protect our children and just make sure that they feel accepted.
Yeah, so important, so very, very important. I'm glad, in some ways, we're still dealing with lots of problems that I've been struggling with and advocating for solutions for decades. But in other ways, we've really grown. I remember hearing my mom, who's a very loving person, say to me in terms of talking about biracial families or multicultural families, it's so unfair to the kids. Biracial kids, they're going to be made fun of, and I suppose that was true, and I suppose that there are kids who experience that's the way that they're bullied. But I think we've come a long way in accepting biracial kids, accepting families of all different shapes, sizes, colors, configurations.
I hope so. I hope that is the case, and I hope that's my daughter's experience, my daughter's plural experience. We also have to face the fact that there prejudice and discrimination. It certainly still exists, and we also need to prepare our children and our families to, how do they respond when that occurs to them, and how do they how do they keep themselves safe? And so, I hope that's my daughter's experience, but we also are reality based in recognizing that, our daughters are probably going to experience some level of discrimination, and, just how can we prepare them to not let that kind of erode their identity and who they are, because they need to be very proud of who they are and their cultural background and their race and their family. Like we want to teach them that, their family is, and who they are is just as important, just as valuable as anybody else's.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Hey, Tom, where can people go to find out more about Some Families, All Families, check out the book, the illustrations, see all the awards that it has won, and find out a little bit more about you?
Love that. So Scoochie and Skittles is my brand name. My collection is under the Scoochie and Skittles name. So people can go to www.scoochieandskittles.com. Skittles is spelled with 2 D's instead of 2 T's. If that is too challenging, I have an alternate website that will point you there, which is www.tomtracybooks.com. That might be easier to find us that way.
Yeah. We've had a really powerful time speaking to the author of Some Families, All Families, the award-winning book from our guest and our friend, Tom Tracy. Hey, Tom, thanks for being back with us.
Absolutely my pleasure. I appreciate being here, Ted. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Hey, we'd love it if you would connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. It's at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and TikTok, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. We are relaunching our Drawing With Your Kids project on YouTube. You're going to love it. Learn how to draw some of the favorite characters we've celebrated here on the podcast with the illustrators who created them. That's all on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And of course, we would love it if you would visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Want to thank everybody who made today's show so wonderful. Our guests, our sponsors, and my team. Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Skylar Strauss, Nick Warner, Kyoko Ito, Kayla Newland, Kristen Barrett, Sydney Swan, Hannah Rose. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. And most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids.